Nathanael was dwelling underneath a fig tree. What he was doing there, we don't exactly know. However, over the centuries, many have speculated that they believe Nathanael was probably there praying under the fig tree. For it was Jewish custom at that time to find a secluded place, a place that was kind of private and where one could kind of just be at peace when one was praying. And this idea of praying under a fig tree would have fit such a place. And we know that Nathanael was devout by the words that are spoken about him, both in Philip's words and in Jesus' words. We hear from Philip that Nathanael is one who is waiting for the Messiah, one who has kind of heard the lessons of the prophets and the law of Moses and is looking for this person to come and to save Israel and to change their circumstances, to restore them in the sight of God. We know from Jesus that he was a true and devout Israelite, an Israelite in whom there was no deceit. We can also kind of garner from Jesus' words and from Philip's reaction to them that he was at prayer because Jesus was the one who saw him there under the fig tree, that it would not have been a proof of faith or a proof of who Jesus was if Nathanael had been easy to see, or if everyone knew that he was there, or if it was something that Jesus could have just walked by and happened to see him. But if Jesus knew that Nathanael was under the fig tree praying and Nathanael was alone, then Jesus was God who was there hearing his prayer, there with him and seeing him, not necessarily with our human eyes, but with the sight of God. That kind of power and confession would have been the type of thing that would cause this young man to realize who Jesus was. And so we can assume that Nathanael was there underneath this fig tree praying. Perhaps he was praying for the Messiah to come, for that very thing to which Philip came upon him and said, Nathanael, I have found him. The guy who Moses and all the prophets wrote about. I found the Messiah. He's Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Now, hearing this from Philip, Nathanael's a bit skeptical, and he answers with a little bit of prejudice. What good thing could possibly come from Nazareth? Nathanael didn't expect the Messiah to be from this almost forgotten town, filled with people whose names history has left unrecorded, other than a small handful that were related to Jesus. No one expected the Messiah to come from there. Most people expect the Messiah to have come from Bethlehem or Jerusalem. But Joseph, while he may have been from Bethlehem, didn't live there. And so Nathanael is in doubt. But Philip says, come and see. And that says a lot about Philip and Nathanael's relationship. That Nathanael had enough faith and trust in his friend or his brother or whatever relation Philip was to him, to leave his time of prayer underneath that fig tree and to come and see who it was that Philip was so excited about. And it's there as he's coming to Jesus that Jesus kind of greets him with lo and behold, here comes an Israelite, a true Israelite, in which there is no deceit. And this kind of puzzles Nathanael. How do you know me? I mean, how can you say such things? We've never met. And Jesus responds, truly I say to you, that before Philip called you, I saw you there underneath the fig tree. And Nathanael says, you are the Son of God, the King of Israel. And I kind of can see Jesus maybe laughing a little bit as he says his next comment. You believe because I say I saw you? I tell you, greater things than these you will see. Truly, truly, if you follow me, you will see the angels of heaven descending from on high and ascending back to it upon the Son of Man. What good can come from Nazareth? Nathanael probably thinks the way many of us do. That we aren't expecting the great things of God to come from lowly places, from places that most people don't even know about, or to come through people that most people know about. And yet, the stories of God and the heroes that God chooses are almost always those kind of people from those kind of places. I mean, look at the stories of God. We hear stories about a farmer who becomes the father of all the nations. We hear the story about an infant who is left in the reeds, who becomes an adopted son to the Pharaoh of Egypt, who are oppressing his people, who then is exiled, and yet returns to lead all of his people, all of the Israelites, out of captivity. We hear the stories of the youngest son of 9, a shepherd boy chosen to be the king of Israel. Stories of prophets whose parentage is unknown, rising up to be the mouthpieces of God. We hear the stories of fishermen, tax collectors, men and women who the world would have forgotten, men and women who were at best known by their neighbors, who end up being called by Jesus to come and to begin a movement that would spark the world's largest religion. We hear the stories of a man who was zealous in his persecution and murder of followers of Christ, who then is converted and turned around to be Christ's greatest champion and was a prolific writer. Even the choice of Israel as God's chosen people is a story of the unexpected. It's not the biggest and most powerful nation in the world. It is the small, almost would be forgotten nation had God not chosen it. What good can come from Nazareth? Everything. All good. As Nathanael found out. Because that day when he met Jesus, it changed his life because he came face to face with not only the Messiah, but with God who chose to be the Messiah. God who chose to grow and spend most of his life on earth in this little unknown town that would have been forgotten had he not chosen to be there. Perhaps you think, what good can come from Towanda, Pennsylvania? It's a small town. Most people have never heard of it outside of the state or even the region. What good can come from French Asylum, Liberty Corners, or North Towanda United Methodist Church? They're not big, powerful, fancy churches that influence Christian culture or even the culture necessarily of their community at the moment. They're small in numbers. And they're filled with not great politicians or world leaders. They're not filled with supermodels or sports athletes or movie stars, but farmers and nurses, retired teachers, and employees of the government, and social workers, bankers, common, ordinary people. And yet, it is exactly those type of people that God chooses to use to do God's greatest works. That what good can come from Tawanda or from these churches is everything. When we open ourselves up to the possibilities that Christ has for us. There is no reason to be prejudiced against yourself or your church or your town. You may be God's next great mouthpiece, here and now, just waiting for God to come and give you the power and the encouragement that you need to begin the great ministry that He has prepared for you. God doesn't work through kings and through the powers that be. He doesn't pick the people that everybody knows, that human eyes see as great, to be the greatest people in His story, to be the main characters of the narrative of the building of the kingdom of heaven. He chooses the people that others would overlook, the people that are hardly known beyond their communities, and He works in their lives and does the greatest things through them. I believe that the best things, that God's greatest works will be done in your hands. When I hear what good can come from here, from Tawanda or from this church, I believe that the greatest of goods can come from here. I believe in God's power to work in your lives. And for you to be the people that are on par and on the level of the heroes of our text, the heroes of our traditions. All you have to do is open yourselves up to God's work. Open yourselves up to God's possibility and trust in His power to work through you. Amen.